on this summery winter's night. This story is called American Wildlife. They came and took Blanche and Daphne in the early hours of a Wednesday. They had already come from Ruby a few months earlier, after which I thought I had corrected the breach. I guess not. Fucking raccoons. During the attack, the girls were most likely screaming and both dogs were barking their heads off. I had started drinking pretty heavily since Kay had died, so I probably could have slept through nuclear war. It takes raccoons seconds to do what they do to chickens, bite their heads off and eat the crop while leaving the rest of their bodies pretty much intact. In Blanche's case, judging by the trail of carnage, she must have tried to get away. Her body was all torn up into bloody, feathery bits and strewn about the yard as if in spite. A raccoon raid happened so fast that there probably wasn't anything either the dogs or I could have done to save the birds. Still, the next day I could see that the dogs felt bad. So did I, as I inspected the coop yet again to see what needed to be reinforced. There's nothing like dead chickens to point out a problem with your setup. The truth is, I was still a little drunk when I was digging the hole to bury the two girls. I put the shovel down, put my hands on my knees, and puked into their grave before putting them in it. The dogs looked at me as if to say, "What is wrong with you?" As I shoveled into the hole, they were as disgusted with me as I was with myself. After I put those girls in the ground, I knew that what I felt was more than just being sick of losing my chickens. I was sick of it deadening in me. I could feel the life oozing out of me by the quart, or fifth, or liter. After I repaired the hen house for the umpteenth time, I realized that I had run out of ideas, and I felt like I was running out of time, too. I simply could not see myself going on anymore. To back up, when I say drinking heavily, I mean some beers, a bottle of wine or so, and a few snorts of vodka a day, more or less. I had long since traded passing out for falling asleep, but old habits die hard. I would still rise early every day, feeling like crap. I'd put the coffee on while I had a beer to take the edge off. I'm 78 years old. It's not like my drinking was interfering with my work, but while I wasn't sure I really wanted to live anymore, I was pretty sure that I didn't want to live like this. My Kay died nearly 2 years ago. For the first few months, I was numb, and then when I started to grieve, I started to drink. I've been prone to melancholy my whole life. Kay was a pistol. She liked people. She liked getting out and doing things. She was very good for me in that way. We were, in fact, very good for each other. I was the one who kept the home fires burning, took care of things around here. She dealt with the world. It's funny now to think back on how Kay liked to have a vodka martini before dinner and always wanted me to join her. I usually said no, claiming to have one more chore to do. Babe, I should have said yes to everything you ever asked me to do. Have a drink, take a walk, swing dance, whatever, just to have spent more time with you. I keep chickens and bees and cats and dogs so I can surround myself with lots of life, and in particular with those creatures who take great pleasure in it and do it well. I do it as a way of keeping my demons in check. But after Kay was gone, every time I buried a chicken or lost a hive, it began to hit me very hard. I used to think of death as just a part of life, but increasingly any loss meant one less spark in the world, thus making the world a little darker, and making my load a little heavier in their passing. It seemed to me that it's up to us, the living, to pick up the slack and keep the light shining in the world. It was becoming a burden I was not sure I could bear. More and more, I found myself coming the closest that I've had in years to praying. These prayers or thoughts were along the lines of, help me know what to do. Help me care about what happens. Or simply, help me. Sometimes just help. My house is paid for, I have no debt. On a daily basis, I considered the sundry ways I could kill myself, including throwing myself down the stairs so it would look like an accident, and my siblings and different children could still collect on my life insurance, as well as divide the bones of my estate among them. The problem, of course, is that there's no guarantee that I'd die as the result of such a fall. I could crash my car and the world would think that the old gal had had a stroke and lost control. But then, death after such an event might not be such a sure thing either. And I wouldn't want to do any damage to anyone's property or cause a lot of trouble having me pried out of the wreckage and the car hauled away. Here's the thing. Just when I thought I had truly hit rock bottom and felt myself circling the drain of despair, the most curious memory came into mind. I worked for the federal government for over 30 years, retired, and twice went back to work for the decennial census, the last one in 2010. Kay was still alive. The U.S. Census Bureau likes to hire retired government workers. We're not likely to be horrified over the state of their operation the way private sector folks tend to be. During the census, I encountered people living alone in all kinds of odd and interesting circumstances. I took pride in counting them to assure that they were represented as a unique thread in the fabric of our land. That might sound corny, but it was important to me that everyone be found and accounted for. This country is so big, and life can be so hard. It weighed heavily on me to think that anyone might be missed. Some people were so alone and lonely. I would come home and kiss Kay and tell her how lucky we were to have each other. By chance, when doing this work, I came across the Robert Frost poem, The Census Taker. It was clear that he knew a little bit about census work and that he, too, deemed it to be important. The poem goes on about dwindling, of wilderness, of time, of people. He comes across an abandoned and derelict house and imagines the people who once lived there and questions himself as to why the empty house upsets him so. I did not memorize the poem, but I recollected its last line. It must be that I want life to go on living. As I remembered it, I found myself responding, Amen. Well, that surprised me. And the gratitude I felt for that small moment was not insignificant. A few words written by someone I've never met came into my head and gave me pause. It changed my mind, in fact. Changed it by only a degree or two, but I'll tell you what, it was enough. Oh, these days are both long and short. That's the damnable thing about being the age I am. My old gang, workmates and girls I knew from school have either died or have lost their minds or have gone to live closer to their children. I do have some sweet neighbors who bring me baked goods and do little chores for me. There's a neighbor kid, Ryan, who comes and rakes my leaves. He just does it and never asks or expects anything for it. His parents might tell him to do it, but even so. I should probably leave him everything I own. Wouldn't that blow his mind? Not to mention what it would do to my sister's kids, the little shitheads. You know, you don't have to believe me. You can explain this shift any way you'd like. You can say that an angel came and tapped me on the shoulder and shook its angel finger at me and told me to get over myself and get on with it. All I'm saying is that I had this moment of grace, if you will, as a result of a line from some damn poem popping into my head. It made me realize that every day is just one more chance, one more maddening chance to, as best as I can, tend my little plot and those who live on it, including my own foolish self. My day is nearly done now. I have a clutch of eggs in one hand and the last of the sweet peas in the other. Gussie presses her cold nose against my dangling wrist and then looks up at me and wags her tail. Mac always sends her over to remind me that it's time to fill their bowls. As I walk across the yard, the late afternoon sun is hitting the back fence where I keep my bees. I watch bees on urgent business shoot out of the hive like sparks from a flame. They don't give up, bees. I like how the sky looks at this time of day. I'll be glad to take off these boots. There are eggs to put away and dogs to feed. Another day marked off in this wild American life. Thank you.